which when they walked out and looked up into the sky, that very baby made that. Now that's a mind-blowing thought if you think about it. And I'm sure they didn't really understand that, but we have because of betterment of a hindsight, we can then look at the baby Jesus and then go out and look at the sky and go, this baby made that because he was God. And he was there when the universe was made. And he helped make that. And it was like, wow, that kind of blows me away when I think about that. So I just think it's two issues over the Christmas holidays that we need to think about. The other thing too is Jesus' as parents, Mary and Joseph. Think about what they did when this baby was born. They had to clean this baby. They had to change his diaper. They had to feed him. They had to do all these things here to this baby. And this baby made everything. So it just kind of blows your wig off when you think about who this baby is, and that he really couldn't do. He was like a typical, newborn baby that couldn't do anything for himself, but he actually made the whole universe. So Mary is having to change his diaper, having to feed him, having to do all these things for him until he got to a certain age. When that changed in Jesus's mind, when it occurred to him who he was, you know what I'm saying? I'd like to know when that happened, because it must have been quite a revelation to this human being, realizing and coming to terms with that he was God in the flesh. So I just think some of those things are interesting questions to assimilate and to think about. And that's what I call when I talk about Christian apologetics. Sometimes it's peeling back the onion and talking about specific things that occurred, that happened. So what do you guys got to say about this?
Yeah, there definitely is, great value as Christians or anyone to look at, the anticipation of Christ's birth and, the vision of it and, the miraculous story at the manger and, the priest, at the church that I go to, or I should say, I think it was actually the deacon, the deacon at the church that I go to. He, he really appreciates what Emily and I are doing here. More, I shared it through what I'm doing, and my wife Sue and my daughter Lana with inclusion and accessibility, accommodation, and respect and the ministry of like a fair approach with people with disabilities, and to have that acumen to to kind of say that whether it's churches or faith-based or a journey with Christ is for everyone. He brought out in a sermon that that really the manger setting and everybody involved, that it was really with Mary and Joseph and everything, and with the Magi, that that it really was a scene of inclusion, the baby in the manger, and and then the beginning of the life as a human story, the journey beginning there, and then what Christ would then do later in his human life to perform miracles and, help the, the blind see and, stuff like that. I guess, with the Holy Family and, with what we're trying to do in our lives, when you look at the journey of Christ as a person and, what we celebrate right now, that we're looking at a baby, and that baby, is foretold to be our Savior, it really is an empowering story of Christ, and it's really eye-opening to humanity when you look at the different reactions, to the human person that was Christ. And so I guess what I look at is some of what I think Christians, I don't know, I find it difficult to navigate in Christianity the balance between Christianity and Judaism, and to look at the practices of Christ and, how he worked, his work, to, as a teacher and in terms of going out there and religious practice, he followed the teachings of the Jewish faith, and so I kind of look at, it's kind of an interesting dichotomy to have, Christianity born from the birth of Christ, and that we have the Jewish faith out there, and then yet the journey of Christians end up being so divergent to the Jewish faith. I'm looking at, when I look at my journey with Christ, I find that if I learn some things once in a while about the Jewish faith, they're like, say, while we're celebrating Christmas, our Jewish friends celebrate Hanukkah. It's just really, really an interesting vantage point to be sitting here and watch this go on around the world. And at least for me, in my journey, I'm thinking it must be out there a little bit more with other schools, other people in their faith journey. And so it's like you said, John, before we got on the show, about questions. I guess that'd be a question I have for you, John. How do you look at, the simultaneous celebrations of Hanukkah and Christmas, and how do you see them fit together, and how do you see that they don't fit together? Well, how do you respond to that, John?
Well, it's a complicated issue, okay, especially for me. Because I look at the celebration of Christmas with Christ's birth. In reality, he probably wasn't born this time of year. In reality, he was born probably in the spring, when a lot of the sheep were needing to be sheared and stuff like that. And that's what they have always done. So we kind of usurp that. But I think about Christmas, and it originally started out to be like a pagan holiday. And then it infused with Christianity. So how do we deal with that? And especially when we're raising children, and do we really want them to believe in a Santa Claus when Jesus is a reason for the season? And I know that is expressed many times, but it really, have we lost sight of that? We have lost sight of a lot of things in this culture, especially in the last 10 years in many ways. And I think it has scared a lot of Christians, especially, that this is not the same country that I was raised in. So how do we deal with that? And we got to look at, and one of the things that keeps coming back to my mind when all these things are happening, is God still is in control of all of it. Sometimes it doesn't seem like it. Sometimes it seems like the world is out of control and going crazy. But in reality, God knew this from the moment he started this universe functioning and put it into use. So that's how I look at that with Christians. So we've got to be very careful. And how do we celebrate his birth without getting too involved, like with Christmas trees and Christmas lights and gift giving and all this kind of thing? How do we bring the real reason back into focus for ourselves and for our families? How do we do this? So these are questions that we have to really dig deep into and look at, and then consider what's going on here, what's happening. Because I think Christians that live and grow up in the other part of the world, when they look at Christians in the United States, they don't really worship God in the same way. So it's a strange question because they don't celebrate Christmas like we do, and with all the gift giving and things like that, we look like a strange beast to them in a lot of ways. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, Kurt. I just have always had a hard time with Christianity really getting involved in and worshiping Christ in this holiday season and seeing all this partying going on and all this shopping and all these things going on, and you don't hardly even hear anything about Christ anymore. It's just a very strange thing, but it kind of tells a lot about our culture. So I think we have to really make sure we understand. Something else I wanted to bring up, a lot of people don't forget that Jesus and his family traveled to Egypt, and that's really where he was born. So Jesus, in a lot of ways, is an Egyptian because he was born in Egypt. So if you think about that, talk about inclusion, like Kurt was talking about a little bit. It really kind of brought the rest of the world in to be involved. And then when you brought in the wise men that came from all these other countries, that was like an inclusion of bringing these individuals in. And the sheep and all these poor people that lived in a town that had a connection to Jesus and his parents right off the bat. I was also thinking about what it took to travel from Israel to Egypt. These two teenagers. Joseph was probably a couple years older. He probably close to 18, maybe a little bit younger. But Mary was probably 15. Think about that, 15 or 16. And these two traveled all these hundreds of miles to the desert and all this country all by themselves. You know, they didn't have anybody else. They didn't go on a big caravan. They went by themselves. But when I say that by themselves, it's very obvious they had God in the flesh with them, and that he was going to take care of them no matter what occurred. And I think that's a great story for us, that we have God involved in our lives, and he will take care of us no matter what occurs. You know, sometimes tough, bad things happen to us, and that's when we reach out. I think that's another reason why God allowed bad things to happen to good people, because he's testing our faith. He's taking us to a place. Because many people would not reach out to God unless bad things happen to them. When bad things are not happening to them, we don't need him. We can take care of everything ourselves. That's the human mindset. So we don't need God. until bad things happen, and then we can't do certain aspects of our lives anymore. So we have to reach out and ask God into our lives, or to help us understand or to deal with what's going on. So I think I'm sure every step of the way on their journey, they were reaching out to God before Mary had the baby. And then when they finally ended up in the location that they were at, and they stayed there, no one knows for how long, but came back to Israel. And that's where Jesus grew up. Then Joseph was a carpenter, and then Jesus learned that trade. And so did his brothers. And so it's his life is really interesting in a dichotomy. What occurred and how it happened. It just blows me away that God himself would make his presence known through a very poor family in a poor area of the world, and not born into the Roman Empire or Egypt, people that had a lot of stuff. He didn't. And all the people he grew up with in his village and stuff like that didn't have a whole lot. But it shows you the humility of the God we serve, that he came into this situation. I think he came born into Israel, the Messiah, at the most perfect time he could have been born. The mere fact that all the Sadducees and the Pharisees were putting all these rules and regulations on all the people, and having them bow down and worship, and doing all these different things. He came to stop that. He came to save us, first of all, but he also came to ease the burden on us human beings. And by gosh, I'm just so glad that he did. I needed somebody to take that's off of my shoulders. When it comes to doing things and things throughout my past and things, but we're all guilty of the sin nature. Just shows up in certain people more than it does others, but everybody is guilty. And I just praise that we have a God that we serve that is like that. Did that answer your question, Kurt?
Yeah, absolutely. I like how you spoke into it, that, we're hearing the story of faith with Mary and Joseph, that, right from the beginning, right even prior to his birth, that it was all a calling, all on faith. And so if we look at the story of Mary and Joseph, for ourselves, and then the role that, Christ plays from the moment of his birth, and how it came into, a very pivotal point in history, and, in terms of humanity and humility, and, just, a lot of the virtues and, things that play right from the get-go, that we can celebrate. You spoke a little bit to, I think the adage in life, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. So, we can only figure that, like with the holiday celebrations and the gift giving, and, for sure here in the US, we've got hyper consumerism. And, I think of, since we're kind of crossing over to different parallels, getting beyond Christianity a little bit, I think of my wife and I and our daughter. We have a social event and activity, a little bit of a tradition of our family, to just kind of round out a little bit what we do with friends. And it's following the Seinfeld sitcom, from Jerry Seinfeld, and with the strike episode and with the thing of Festivus. But one reason I bring this up is, within this episode on TV with the sitcom, the character George Costanza, I'm sorry, Frank Costanza. Frank Costanza, the father, goes to buy a gift for his son, and this is a sitcom, so it's a an exemplification to laugh at. But Frank is going to buy his son a doll, and in the merchandising and in the store, that thing is like just barely within reach up at a top shelf. And through the chaos of it all, it's almost like a Black Friday. Frank is just going in there, and he's gonna, thank goodness there's one more left. And he goes, and he's just got it in his grasp, and then like a Black Friday shopper thing, all of a sudden it gets whisked away by another shopper. And so that too was to illustrate the hyper merchandising and just kind of doing all this stuff in the kind of saying Christmas celebration and Christmas preparation and all of that. And to your point, the excessive nature of it all is just really, where we don't find it to be consistent with the story of the birth of Christ. So it's true. I think that, the loss of focus on the scriptural aspects, going back to, the Bible verses where the story is told, to go right there to the original message is so important. And, it probably happens a little bit, but it's, to your point, probably not in any equity or balance, with the other things that people just kind of coast through. And then with our other Jaws Coffee Chat show with the mental health awareness aspect, that many get way lost in that. That's very, it's an adverse experience to worry about these gatherings. Like my Schertel relative, Jory Przynski, founder of Hope Instilled, an oasis for those living life through the experiences of chronic pain. And then people suffering from chronic pain in this holiday season, where it's like a Christmas party. And then, there's many examples where somebody would love to commit and to know that they're going to be at the party, but it's so easy that medically speaking, all of a sudden something happens, right at the moment of needing to go to that party, which, by the way, I'm going to be on here for a few more minutes, and I'm going to be switching gears and hopping off of here and going to a party for our Optimist Club. But yeah, how much is all of this really, what the reason for the season is, and really the purpose we need to stay rooted is? I mean, sure, if it's fueling you and you can go in and it can fuel your joyousness, and for sure God wants us to be happy, so if it works out that way, great. But to your point, John, I think you bring up a great point. Many of us who have the fortune or the fashion that works out, and that's the best thing for us, is to go party and whatever, and have great food fare and, friendship, fellowship. When people gather, yeah, it can be a great thing, and it can be a great thing to add to our journey with Christ. But then for others, suffering from depression or, other things that just, the goodness of fit is not there to rack up all these things on the, Christmas season calendar, so then what are we doing to be there for those that really just need to maybe have a Bible study, or just maybe need something a little bit more low key, or a little bit less, a little bit less to scale, just a little bit more of an intimate connection. Are we reaching out and doing that when people just need a one-to-one conversation, at the time? So great point about watching out for the overzealous nature of, the hype of Christmas and the commercialism and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I like what you said.
Yeah. And before you run away, I like what you said about the Optimist Club. Everything is a matter of perspective. It really is. And what I was going to do is recommend people to watch a movie, and they probably heard about it, but it's called A Wonderful Life. And I recommend watching the black and white version of it. we watch it every year as a family and then talk about it. What occurred to Joe Bailey in the movie is actually what they call middle knowledge. He was getting a perspective from God, what his life would have looked like in a different way. And that's exactly what occurred in that movie. And he was able to see what his life or the world in that town was like with him not being born, because that's what he asked for. And then he made friends with an angel, Clarence, and then he went through the whole situation. But the whole movie will give you a perspective that God has, and not many human beings have that opportunity to live that. Kurt, I'll let you go. We'll see you later, and I'll keep talking here for a while because I find this very interesting, and I find that movie very interesting in helping us to have a different perspective on things in our life, because things can be depressing. And that was part of what we were talking about in the podcast before this when it came to mental health. Because we know that a lot of people suffer from depression at Christmas and New Year's. It's this time of year of celebration. So that's kind of what we talked about. But it kind of drifted off into this group here too. I like talking about a lot of things when it comes to Christianity. There's things I need to know in my own heart. Like I had said before, I was an atheist until I was 30. And then I became a Christian, but there were still certain aspects of the Christian faith that I needed to deal with. I was very big in science. I still am. But one of my gods of the world was believing in evolution. And I finally came to the conclusion and joined a group. Hugh Ross is an astronomer, and he has an organization that talks about different things like the Big Bang. I'm what they call a old earther. I believe that the universe is 13.8 billion years old. But I do not believe in evolution. And I joined this group, local here, but it's all over the country. Reason to Believe, it's called. And we talk about different things that have come up and happened because there are so many scientists out there. But there's a lot of Christians that believe that the universe is only like 9,000 years old. But we talk about Genesis 1, Genesis 2, that the universe was already here when God's spirit was upon the deep, and then before the first day was created. Anyways, we believe that the universe started at one specific point in time. We believe it was 13.8 billion years ago. If you go back in and look at Genesis and you look at what a day is, it's called Yom. It could be a 24-hour period, it could be a 12-hour period, or it could be a very long length of time. And if you look at certain other scriptures in the Old Testament, it almost confirms that fact. But this conversation of how old the earth is or the universe is kind of a in-house conversation with other Christians. It doesn't take away or adjust the fact that Jesus Christ died for our sins, and he showed up here 2,000 years ago in the flesh. So, and that's why we're talking about Christmas, of what occurred 2,000 years ago. It's a very powerful thing. The whole story of Jesus Christ and him showing up here and his life that he led is people could not make that up. You could not make these stories up. It's just amazing. So that's what I was talking about with George Bailey and It's a Wonderful Life. If you get a chance to sit down with people, it always makes me cry at the end because of how his whole perspective from being wanting to commit suicide, which he almost did, to Clarence connected with heaven, making it so he was never born. And then he got to see what occurred and all the bad things that were not there because George Bailey had contributed a lot. That's something we forget too, especially when we're depressed. We forget how much we have contributed to not only our lives, which that's pretty obvious, but to the lives of many, many people throughout the years. Scrooge was another one. We watched that last night. The old original Scrooge that was made in 1934 or something like that, how his whole perspective changed. And he had to go back in time 3 different occasions to see what had occurred and what happened to him, especially as a kid. And sometimes I have to think about what occurred, what happened to me when I was a child that I didn't really ever deal with as a kid. As an adult now, and I go to a 12-step program that I sit down with a book with other men, and we go through this. So this might be a good time for you people out there, especially men, to think about getting involved in a 12-step program to a local church and going through and uncovering, peeling back that onion of different things that have happened to you and what has caused you to think the way you do. I know with me and having my anger issues throughout my life really stemmed from what occurred and what happened. So it has for a lot of people. Did something happen when you were being raised in a church? How about as an adult, things that occurred that you have never really talked about that really pulled you away from believing? Some of the most powerful people that argue against Christianity are people that went through something very bad in their lives. An incident that occurred. So peel that back and go there. I had a number of things that occurred, but God kind of used that and brought me back when I was 30 years old, and back to really looking to Him again. And then when I accepted God, I had to deal with some other issues, especially when it came to evolution, because in our lives, there can only be 2 ways that life sprang forth on this planet and in the universe, actually. And it's either God designed it and made it, an intelligent designer, or that it sprang from a godless, unintelligent, unguided force that was out there, that God was never involved. So there's only 2 ways that life could have come from. So I had to deal with that, and I came to soon find out. I joined an organization that are people that are involved in science and that are Christian, and we have conversations about this all the time. And I since found out that there are a lot of scientists in the evolutionary genre or organizations that have come to have real heavy-duty questions about evolution. There's a website with over 1,000 scientists that are involved in it now, that said there are too many unanswered questions with evolution, that we no longer believe in evolution. You know, evolution is very, very complex. And to this day, they have never brought life from non-life in a laboratory anywhere on this planet. They have never come up with a platform to be able to do that. And they ask that question all over the planet every year when these scientists get together. And they've never been able to answer it. Life does not come from non-life, and they have not been able to figure out how that, if they believe in evolution, how that occurred. You know, they have all these ideas about after life is started and how it supposedly evolves from one source to the next. And the first thing you have to remember is that there's two types of evolution. One is called macroevolution, and one's called microevolution. And microevolution is certain things within a species or animal will change into something else. Like a bird's beak will shorten up because of the habitat it lives in. But they have no way of explaining macroevolution, which is life changing from one species to another species. I've never been able to do that. So when they say it's a done deal, it's far from a done deal. But anyways, I want to get back into the reason for the season, because we're going to be ending here soon. But I just want to talk about Jesus Christ and what occurred to me in my life. Like I said, I was 30 years old, and God put some heavy duty things on me. And I ended up going to, I got a divorce from my wife and went on the road. I ended up in Oregon going to a church up there, the Applegate Community Church, middle of nowhere. There was hundreds of people in this church. And I went on a Wednesday, which is a Bible study, and also a Sunday. But I remember sitting there and listening to the preacher talk. And he talked about Jesus Christ in the Bible. I was raised a Catholic. So when I heard him talking about this, my question was, who is he talking about? I've never heard of this before, even though I kind of knew who Jesus was. So I felt like he was talking directly to me. He was directing all these questions and answers and stuff. And for the length of time that I spent in Oregon, I eventually went back to Illinois, where I had grown up. But my wife and my kids were in the Phoenix area. They were living in Tempe, Arizona at the time. And I eventually went to Illinois and told a number of people what had happened to me, and I became a Christian. And I went back to Phoenix, and the Lord put our family back together. To this day, I have 3 sons and 7 grandchildren, and they're all believers in Jesus Christ. I sometimes think about my middle son just got married a month ago, and it was a very Christ-oriented service. And I just at the wedding itself, I just looked at my whole family, and I praise God for doing this miracle in our lives. Unbeknownst to me, because if it was just on me and my merits, they would jettison Christianity altogether. But they didn't. They have a love for Jesus today, and I don't understand why. But I remember, so that is a kind of Christ talk. I was an atheist, and a kind of a very mean one at one time, and I went to, programs and organizations that were speaking bad things about Christians and Christianity. And then I became one, and I lost a lot of friends in the process. But all told, with all of it, I went back to Chicago, Illinois first, I brought a friend of mine and his wife to Christianity, and I came back to Arizona, and I was able to witness to my family, and they all became Christian. And then through the years, um, a lot of other people that I spoke to became Christians, and I really have a Christian worldview now, whereas before I had an atheistic worldview. And I didn't even know, if I think back and look at it, my atheistic worldview, which is what it seems like our country and our culture is becoming more and more of. And it scares me a little bit because I was there and I saw that 40 years ago, and now we're here again. And that's like, but again, like I talked to Kurt, God knew this all beforehand. So there's no reason to really get scared that God, before the foundations of the earth, the world, that this is all supposed to play out like it is playing out in our lives today. So come back to this group here. I'm going to invite you to Christ Talk. We invite people to come in here, and if you have hard questions that you would like to have answered, I request that you come and show up. After the first of the year, we'll be going to get together once a week on Mondays afternoons, early evening, wherever, depending where you're located. And we'll talk about your question. And if I don't have an answer for it, or Jennifer doesn't, or Kurt doesn't, or Emily doesn't have an answer for it, we will then think about it and then come back the next week and talk about it. I'll bring up a connection to my apologetic website, and there's a lot of questions in there that might help you to answer certain things in your life. So I know, come back and check us out and talk with us, and we'll see you in the new year. Happy New Year and a happy Christmas.
Okay, I want to first of all, say that there on Saturday, December 17th, there is a mutual aid solidarity summit with a karaoke party right after. So from 2 to 4 Central is the summit, and then 4 o'clock Central is the karaoke party. Please, you can get a hold of me at EMILYGOLLMER at iCloud.com. Also, the Happy Neighborhood Project, the International Day of Happiness, the official International Day of Happiness is March 20th, 2023. However, the Happy Neighborhood Project is celebrating it on March 17th, St. Patrick's Day. Tickets are $20 right now, but will go up starting January 1st, $30. Encourage everybody to get ticket ASAP, lasts from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Pacific or noon to 6 Eastern. With speed networking, speakers, prizes, and so on. Encourage everybody to come to that, and so you can get a hold of us about that as well. I would like to thank John and Kurt for being on here today, as well as for anybody who has tuned in. Our next Christ Talk is going to be on January 2nd, 2023. So encourage everybody to come back then and tune in. And to remind everybody to subscribe to our channels, like, share, comment, interact with our social media And check out our website at jensbooksandmore.com. That is www.jensbooksandmore.com. That's JENNS booksandmore.com. So until next time, wish you a productive and enjoyable week and have a good holiday and new year. So let's be healthy and stay happy.
Okay, but have a happy new year.
You too.
Hey, Emily, you have a great Christmas. Are you spending Christmas with your family?
Yes.
Good.